Penguin Audio presents There Goes Gravity, A Life in Rock and Roll. Written and read by me, Lisa Robinson. For Fran Lebowitz. Prologue. My first job in the music business in 1969 was filing for a few hours every afternoon for Richard Robinson. At that time, Richard was a syndicated newspaper columnist, had a syndicated radio show, and was the assistant to Neil Bogart, the president of Buddha Records. He also hosted the all-night graveyard shift at WNEW-FM radio in New York City. I was, for a short time, a substitute teacher in Harlem teaching first grade. I heard Richard on the radio late at night and thought he had a great voice and great taste in music. Despite the fact that this was the beginning of so-called free-form radio, and the disc jockeys were supposed to be able to play whatever records they chose, the truth was they could not. Richard was fired and then brought back on 3 separate occasions. The first time was for playing unfamiliar music, which at that time meant black music, like Otis Redding and Tina Turner. The second time he was asked to leave was when he played Jimi Hendrix's Star-Spangled Banner, deemed unpatriotic by the station's executives. The final blow was when he used the words rock and roll. He was told in a letter that he still has somewhere that surely your fertile mind can come up with a better phrase. When I saw him introduce a Janis Joplin concert at Hunter College, I thought he was great-looking, tracked him down, and interviewed for a part-time job. Each day after teaching school, I'd change into jeans, fake lizard boots, a raccoon fur jacket I bought at a thrift shop, and go downtown to his office in the Gray Bar building next door to Grand Central Station. I earned $25 a week to do his filing. 3 months after we met, I quit my $300 a week teaching job and, despite my mother's warnings, went to work for Richard full-time for $100 a week. 2 months after that, we were married and remain so to this day. At first, with all the free albums and concert tickets, it didn't feel like a job. It was a time when things just sort of happened. There was no agenda. Nothing was planned. I had not taken any journalism classes. I had no plans to write. There were about 5 people in New York City who were writing about rock music then, and Richard was one of them. In 1969, he got tired of writing a weekly column for the British music weekly Disc and Music Echo, so he turned the column over to me. I didn't think I could do it, but he said if I could talk, which I certainly could, I could write. He opened the door. I walked right through it and never stopped. For the first decade of my career, I certainly wouldn't have described it as a career. It was, as Keith Richards has said about so many things, a lucky accident. In the 1970s, there were only a few rock publications aside from the fledgling Rolling Stone, and Richard and I wound up editing 2 of them, Hit Parader and, with Lenny Kaye, Rock Scene. Both Richard and I wrote for Cream magazine. He did an electronics column called Rewire Yourself, and I wrote about the then unheard-of topic of rock fashion and style. I called the column Eleganza, after a clothing catalog that appeared to cater to the pimp trade. My column and disc eventually led, 2 years later, to a job writing the New York column for the more prestigious British music weekly, The New Musical Express. Things were just so different then. One thing after another just sort of fell into place. By 1972, there were maybe 25 people total in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and London who were writing about rock and roll. Some people took it very seriously. Some of us, who thought it was supposed to be about fun and sex and the thing that got us out of our parents' house and changed our lives, did not. Being born and brought up in Manhattan automatically gave you the feeling that you were already at the center of the universe. I would never know how it felt to drive into Manhattan and see the skyline for the first time. I never felt that I had to get out of somewhere and come to New York City. I was already here. When I was a teenager, I listened to Symphony Sid's jazz radio show on a transistor radio under the covers in bed at night. This was my introduction to Miles Davis, Horace Silver, Ahmad Jamal. It opened up a sexy, sophisticated world. I heard the hip British monologuist Lord Buckley and memorized the Lenny Bruce records that were on Phil Spector's Phillies.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?